Under a Desperate Sky is a Western drama about a frontier farm wife who flees an abusive marriage, falls for another woman, and triggers a deadly confrontation with the vengeful husband who tracks her down. It's a tale of strength through self-acceptance in which the protagonist finds happiness only after making the decision to be true to herself. I wrote this story for two reasons. The first is that I've written several books on Texas history in the 19th century. The period fascinates me and I wanted to bring it to life. The more important reason, though, is that someone very close to me is gay. I yearn for the day when this person need not fear the reactions of other people. I would hope that anyone watching the film going through similar trials would take heart from the story. The story begins with Sophie, an impoverished widow living with her teenage daughter Eula, marrying Ike Sunday. Ike seems to be a nice enough guy, but deep down he's a hard man, scarred by service in the Civil War. Not long after the wedding, Red Larson comes by the farm. She's a wheelwright and picks up a wheel of Ike's to fix. Sophie is enchanted with this woman. One night, after a particularly tiring day, Sophie declines Ike's sexual advances. He hits her and forces himself on her. She turns for advice to Reverend Cyrus Cousins, who happens to also be an old war buddy of Ike's. Cyrus tells her that it's a wife's duty to submit to her husband. Red then brings the wheel back. Red and Sophie really hit it off. Ike sees that, doesn't like it, and tells Sophie later that she is no longer allowed to see Red. But they continue meeting in secret, and at one of these secret meetings, flirtatious behavior leads to Red making a pass at Sophie. She rejects this. It frightens her, and she was raised to believe that homosexuality is a sin. When she gets back to the cabin, Ike is waiting for her. He's figured out that she's been meeting in secret with Red. He beats her. He goes to town to confront Red, demand that she no longer see his wife. She stands her ground. He leaves, but he comes back later and burns her shop down. She now has no choice but to leave Austin. She decides to head to Blanco, 60 miles to the west. Sophie is devastated. Ike then hatches a plan to marry Eula off to local saloon keeper Horace Putnam. He invites Horace over for supper. He and Ike get drunk. Ike begins playing fiddle. Horace dances with Eula. He gropes her and assaults her. She defends herself, stabs him with a knife, and kills him. Ike tries to intervene, but Sophie hits him from behind with an empty whiskey jug and knocks him out. Sophie and Eula then flee in the horse and wagon. On the way, they stop in Austin, and Sophie buys a pistol, and she decides that they will go to Blanco and find Red. Ike wakes up the next morning, staggers into town, and recruits Cyrus to help him fetch Sophie back. After a very long and arduous journey, Sophie and Eula make it to Blanco, where Red receives them rather coolly. Sophie and Red have a heart-to-heart talk. Red declares her love for Sophie. Sophie has strong feelings, but she cannot reciprocate. The next day, Ike and Reverend Cousins reach town. They learn that Sophie is staying with Red. On their way to the house, they encounter Eula, take her captive. At the house, Ike demands that Sophie come with him. She fires her pistol at him, but then realizes that he's got Eula, so she throws her pistol out the window and goes with him in exchange for him letting her go. On the way back to Austin, though, Ike begins beating Sophie so severely that Reverend Cousins tries to intervene. He and Ike end up in a fight in which Ike kills him. Red then shows up. She's been trailing them. She demands that Ike let Sophie go. He takes out his gun and shoots her. Sophie runs toward her. He tackles her from behind and starts to rape her. She fights back, though, and is able to stab him and disable him. Sophie then gets Red back to Blanco, discovers that her wound is not serious. She and Red have a heart-to-heart talk, and finally she's able to admit to Red that she does indeed love her. They go into the house and make love. They spend the night in bed. The next morning, Eula finds them. Sophie tells her the situation, and Eula says it's okay because Red is a whole lot better than Ike. Eula then goes to make breakfast while Sophie goes outside to fetch water. Ike surprises her. He pulls a knife. He's going to force her back into the house where he intends to kill Red. On the way, though, Sophie spots her pistol in the grass. She picks it up, whirls around. Ike charges, and she fires and kills him. Eula and Red race out of the house, see what's happened. Sophie says it's okay. Ike will not be bothering us anymore. And once the dust is settled, they go back in the house. They have a prayer around the table and then enjoy their first meal together as a true family. Under a Desperate Sky should appeal to several audiences, including fans of Western action and adventure, as well as those interested in issues affecting gays and gay rights. The strong female protagonist should draw in a woman viewership that otherwise might not be attracted to the film. I would anticipate it could be shot on a low budget by industry standards and should do well in North American and European streaming platforms. Thanks for listening.